To do a horrible impression and quote Professor Hubert Farnsworth, good news, everyone! We finally finished the intro chapter and can move on to actual science stuff now. And it's the best chapter of the year, cool molecules and stuff we probably know a little bit about already. Unfortunately, that also means it will be kind of a lengthy chapter and will get tricky at times. So it's mostly just memorization of vocabulary and definitions, but if you keep up with everything, keep looking at your notes, come to extra help, you'll be fine. If you don't, it's going to be a long couple of weeks. We're going to start with homeostasis because everything will keep coming back to that this year, and you've already done a gizmo on it anyway. This diagram here is like what your gizmo is about. If your body temperature rises, whether due to internal or external conditions, your body will try to bring that temperature back down to normal by making you sweat. This has the same effect as spraying yourself with water jumping in a pool. The liquid pulls heat away from your body and makes you cooler. At some point, your body should reach a normal temperature again, and then instead of just sweating forever, your brain tells the sweating to stop until you get too hot again, at which point the whole process can start over. A similar thing happens when you get too cold, as I was talking to some of you about during the gizmo. Instead of sweating, your brain makes your body start shivering, which is like mini exercise to move your muscles and produce heat energy. This warms you up until your temperature returns to normal, which, again, at that point, your body stops shivering so you don't get too hot. Can you handle one more example of this? When you eat food, your blood sugar rises. Your body doesn't need this extra sugar if you're not actively engaged in exercise or other strenuous physical activity, so your body releases the chemical insulin from the pancreas, which pulls sugar out of the blood and stores it for later. When sugar levels are normal, insulin is turned off until you eat again. Are you picking up any patterns here? Your body is more or less controlled by a series of switches that can be turned off or on as needed. And this is happening all the time, every minute of every day of your life. Now that stuff's out of the way, let's talk about what we learned in the gizmo. Homeostasis is our bodies maintaining a stable environment, even when things change around us. If we lived in perfect little controlled conditions all the time, this wouldn't be an issue. But we know that temperatures and other things change in our surroundings and in our bodies all the time. To accomplish this task, we use what are called feedback mechanisms. Think of where you hear that term, feedback. Besides the awful screeching noise that was on the loudspeaker until this morning, feedback is when you give or receive some kind of information based on an event, like a coach giving you advice while watching you practice, or a teacher correcting a mistake to help you learn how to answer a math problem. Feedback mechanisms are the same thing inside your body. Your brain is always talking to different organs and systems and setting signals to make adjustments when something starts to look less than normal, then waits for a positive response to flip the switch back again. Equilibrium is a word you've probably heard at some point, and it's when two or more things are balanced and equal and stable. But we don't live in a perfect world, so instead of talking about perfect equilibrium, instead we talk about dynamic equilibrium, which is when things change but maintain an overall balance. Think of your own body temperature, as we did a couple minutes ago when we saw in the gizmo. For most of your life, it's about 98.6 degrees. Over the course of your life, your temperature may go up or down, but it mostly maintains a balance around that normal temperature. That's dynamic equilibrium, staying mostly constant and balanced even though small changes are happening. So in the picture at the bottom with the little graph, you can see that it mostly stays right about a level dead center there. It'll go up and it'll go down, but overall it's pretty much the same thing for most of this time period. Living things must be able to carry out certain life processes, or jobs that distinguish them as being alive. Nutrition means that living things need to take in food or some other form of nutrients. This can be autotrophic, like when organisms such as plants make their own food from sunlight, or heterotrophic, like when an animal eats that plant or another animal. Transport is when those nutrients that were just taken in are moved around to wherever they're needed inside of an organism, whether it be a body, a plant, or something else. Respiration is kind of like what we think of as breathing, but in general, it's making energy from those food molecules. Synthesis is kind of similar to that. It's building new body materials out of what we get from the food. So we get it in nutrition, move it around through transport, and use it for either respiration for energy or synthesis to make new body parts. Growth is making more body cells to make the whole organism larger overall. So instead of using the food molecules to make different parts of ourselves, we use them to actually grow the entire organism and get bigger. Once this all takes place, we have excretion, which is ridding the body of the waste left over after these other processes are done. To control all this, we have what's called regulation, which is just parts of your body communicating with each other to make sure everything's working properly, and then homeostasis is being properly maintained. And that's really, really important. We'll talk about this in a couple of chapters, in a couple of months, I guess, actually. And it's things like your nerves and hormones that just kind of send signals all over the place and make sure everybody's working properly. And this last one's a little bit different. Reproduction is making new individuals to increase the population size. So this isn't actually necessary for an individual. An individual does not need to reproduce to be considered alive. Obviously, people don't have to have babies in order to be alive, but for the population to keep going and for the species to keep going, reproduction is necessary from at least some percentage of the population. So you take all those life processes I just mentioned on the last slide and combine them into one thing. It's what we call metabolism. We usually use this word metabolism to mean how our bodies process food and gain or lose weight or things like that. But its real meaning is just a little bit more involved than that. It's all life processes in an organism combined into one thing and one goal. Living things now can be either single-celled or unicellular organisms, one cell, or they can be multicellular or made of multiple or many cells. Typically, we're talking about a lot. It could just be more than one, though. It counts the same way. Now, to maintain homeostasis in these organisms, they're going to do different jobs. Single-celled organisms can carry out metabolism using organelles, which are like the little parts of cells, like little mini organs inside single cells, such as chloroplast, mitochondria, the nucleus, things like that. Multicellular organisms, again, we're talking bigger things, they have those same organelles inside their cells. So on a cellular level, they use the organelles, but on a big whole body level, they use organs and organ systems and all these different cells working together. So it's just a scale issue. Single cells are really tiny. They only have these little small parts called organelles. On a big organism like a person, a big animal, or a large plant, they have these cells doing their small job, but then on the whole organism scale, again, they have the cells that work together and the organs and body systems that work together also. Okay, so this is just a little organizational chart of basically how cells and systems are organized in a living thing, starting from small and going to largest. So you're probably familiar with cells in some way. We're going to look at cells during the year. You probably looked at them under a microscope at some point in your life. But cells are made up of organelles, as I just mentioned. There's little tiny pieces like chloroplast and mitochondria and cell wall, cell membrane that make up individual cells. And each organelle does a specific job to help the one cell be alive. Cells are the smallest living things that count as being alive. We'll see that next chapter. Related cells that work together to do the same kind of job come together to form tissues. This could be heart tissue, stomach tissue, lung tissue. It's just material made up of a bunch of cells doing the same kind of job. And these related tissues now work together to form organs. So we're going just kind of up the ladder. This would be now if you had, say, different types of heart tissue, those tissues work together to form the organ we know of as the human heart. Similar organs that work together to do the same kind of job form organ systems. So you might have heart cells who work together to make heart tissue. The heart tissues, whether it's parts of the left side of the heart, the right side of the heart, the middle part of the heart, they all work together to make the organ of the heart. And then the heart, the human organ, plus different blood vessels and other things that go along with that, they work together to make the circulatory system, including the blood, to make up a body system, an organ system. All the different organ systems in a living thing, again, in our bodies, you've got the circulatory system, the digestive system, the respiratory system, the reproductive system. All these things go together to make up the actual whole organism. So we're starting really, really small and just building up stepwise, all these things working together and working together and working together to make the entire organism one whole big living thing. This looks a little bit like the slide we saw a couple minutes ago, but we're trying to wrap everything up here and answer this weird little robot dog's question. So in order to be considered alive, a few things have to be true. We looked at the life process before. To do that, a living thing has to be made up of at least one cell. So a lot of times we'll see multicellular organisms, but there are plenty of single-celled organisms too, and they are the building blocks of living things. You have to have cells or you're not alive. Cells have to contain DNA as instructions. So you have to have the cells, and they have to have the instructions inside all those cells in the form of DNA. And finally, these living things also have to be able to carry out all those life processes that we saw before. So that combination of processes that we call metabolism. They have to be able to grow and take in energy and move nutrients around, things like that. So something to keep in mind as we're moving forward here throughout the rest of the year, is this little robot dog that's asking about being alive actually alive? I mean, it looks like a dog. That should make it alive, right? It's wearing glasses. Living things wear glasses sometimes if they have bad eyes. But obviously, it's not actually alive. So we're talking about living environment. That's living things as well as their environments that are not always made up of living components. So for that, we just have these two vocabulary words you need to know, and that's biotic and abiotic. Anytime you see that prefix bio, you're talking about living things. And abio will be the non-living thing. So biotic means living factors. So like people, plants, animals, bacteria. Abiotic will be non-living things like weather, water, dirt, things that you know are not actually alive. And we'll look at a picture in a second and try to figure out and compare what's alive and what's not. Okay, so pretend this is a game inside like a kid's book or something. Take a minute, look at this picture, and on your notes, just list any living things you see, what's biotic, and any non-living things you see, what's abiotic. And I'll give you the answers in the next slide. So pause and see what you can find. It wasn't too bad, right? Just a quick thing. If you had trouble figuring out what was alive and what wasn't alive, maybe come for extra help. We'll talk about this because that's kind of an important thing, and you really should be able to do that at this point. I was trying to make this video under 10 minutes. Looks like I'm going to come in just over that time. Now that you're finished with these slides and notes, because you should have been filling in your notes as you went, hopefully, go back to your OneNote and complete the form questions posted below. So I think we did this earlier in the year. It's just a little multiple choice thing that's listed there. It has some fill in the blanks too. If you have anything you want to ask me, and I'll have some things I want you to fill in, fill those in. And then also go back to your notes and fill in the 2 pages, complete the 2 pages that I posted pictures of here. It's right after your notes in your new packets, and it's only 5, 6 questions, whatever it is, nothing too crazy. Fill that in, finish everything up, and have it ready for Friday. We'll go over some of these. These will get graded, the form will get graded, and we'll be ready to move on and talk about actual parts of food, all the different food molecules and stuff that I kind of teased today on Wednesday.